Letter 9, May 7th. Clichy. Clichy is pure whiteness like bunny. It is my home as well as shoes and bunnies. Clichy is the first stop on line 13 of the metro. It is where we built our ideal love. Though I failed miserably. I lost 100% of my dreams of marriage and love. I lost the woman of my dreams, and I lost little Bunny, the symbol of extension of my love that we brought back from Pont Neuf. How I cared for little Bunny. I've never and will never again care for someone the way I cared for our rabbit. This is clear to me. Bunny was one of the happiest things in my life, a riddle revealed. But I got what I deserved. I made her unhappy in Clichy. I couldn't stand her not loving me in Clichy because she repeatedly wanted to abandon us in Clichy. I turned into a raging beast and wounded her in a fit of insanity. After I drove her back to Taiwan, she turned me out with lightning speed and turned her back on me, and I returned to Paris alone. She quickly found someone else. I got what I deserved, because I've never and will never again hurt someone the way I hurt her. My excessive love was inevitably going to cause harm and lead to my loss. If I couldn't temper my excessive love for her, then I really can't bear the pain of her abandoning me. I possibly could if that was the only way to keep me from hurting her. I must accept this fate of being abandoned and betrayed. I must accept my helplessness. There's no way for me to not lose. There's nothing I can do for myself. Once in Taiwan, I told Xiaomei, my younger friend from college, how I wrote to 5 medical research facilities in Paris asking if 2 ova could produce life using modern technology. Standing outside the University Science Center, Xiaomei guffawed and said that she would do her best to develop new technology for me. I told Yang the same thing in Tokyo, and she became both annoyed and amused, saying to me, "Have you lost your mind thinking about having a child?" Yes, I had never wanted a child and was not fantasizing about raising a daughter who looked like Shu, and only like her. I fantasized about raising a child, especially when I was in Clichy, and dawned on me that Shu didn't love me anymore. I long for a human life that will never leave me as long as I live and who looks just like her. I don't know why she has to look just like her and not like anyone else. Perhaps I can only love someone who looks like her. No matter how she might change in sickness and old age and death, I could love her and care for her, do my absolute best for her for the rest of my life. I long for a human life who looks exactly like her and who will need my love and care for the rest of her life. I love her like this not because she's perfect or possesses certain qualities well suited for me. In other people's eyes, she is possibly just an ordinary girl. I love her like this because my desire matured for her. Yes, this is a milestone in my life that can never be erased. For a while, we loved each other absolutely. We achieved the kind of union that I've dreamed about and longed for so deeply. We were seamlessly united, bodies moving as one toward our ideal love. From the time I met her a few months before leaving to study in France to the middle of my stay in France, we loved each other with our whole hearts and lived fully in love's paradise. I know that I couldn't love anyone else in this perfect way, nor be able to create such a loving union with anyone else. Deep down, I even reject this possibility. I don't want it. Even though she left me here alone, broke my heart, and destroyed me, inflicting the most intense shame upon me, I still can't see myself without being in this union, without ever holding on to this union. This whole tragic ordeal has forced my desire to mature. Her existence has released an enormous capacity for love within me, an enormous capacity for love that has been stamped forever as hers, an enormous capacity for desire that because of her has expanded too much and laid my soul too bare. Maybe because my soul has been why I'm a kind of expert on her life. Maybe because my soul has been bared, I can offer her a kind of purge, a kind of catharsis. Maybe it's why I'm a kind of expert on her life. Now that I understand so clearly, I have ever greater reserves of energy to tap for her. My life is for her. I know I won't ever find another human being so beautiful to me, one whom I love for her eyes, forehead, lips, hair, hands, feet, her face, her body, her voice, her scent, her every mannerism, her expressions when she's talking, the clothes and makeup she wears, her aesthetic sensibilities, the way she gets along so easily with other people and with animals, which is an aspect of her personality that touches me most, and her perceptions and the spiritual issues she shares with me, as well as her unique natural gift for nurturing me, listening to me, giving to me, and loving me. Even when I feel hatred toward her and scream and hit her, I am painfully aware that for me she is excessively. May 8th, 1. What I've come to understand in the past 30 minutes may be the most important breakthrough in my life. It is central to the loaded subject of physical sexual desire, but I'm not ready to explain it to Shu yet. The moment Laurence entered my body, I felt an enormous, almost crushing mental and physical burden. This was a kind of mental and physical double impermeabilité that I had not experienced since the hazy nightmares of my youth. Though I've tried to develop a sense of awareness, at the moment what my mind and body experienced was too intense for me to comprehend. 2. My big sister called from Taiwan to tell me she had sent the CD I wanted. She said she has to count the beads of a Buddhist rosary before bed every night or she can't sleep well and has nightmares about someone dying. The morning I phoned Yang, she told me she was just about to call when I obediently called her. She said she'd had a dream that night of my coffin being brought to her door, but I was nowhere to be found. Xiao Mei also said she had a dream earlier in the year where I was crying, "It hurts, it hurts." That was around the time Shu was causing me such anguish in Paris. Xiao Mei's subconscious is unfailingly accurate and is protective of me. It's a connection we've shared for 6 years. The person who died in my elder sister's dream must be the one whose coffin is in Yang's dream. Me. Both of them discern the seriousness of my distress that emanates from the deepest core of my being. It's more or less because of these two people that my physical body still exists. One is my own flesh and blood, and the other is someone whom I could feel, from the moment I met her, really needed me to be alive. I've maintained this deep connection with Yang for more than 5 years. Yes, my elder sister and Yang were right. Even Qing Jin heard my signals of distress. 3 days after I returned from Tokyo, I received an inexplicable phone call from her. I had been out of touch with her for nearly 3 months. The evening she brought me dinner, though I couldn't eat a bite, and took a bunch of sleeping pills. I had asked her why she bothered coming anywhere near me, and she laughed and said it was because she sensed something was wrong. Calling out for help, I was calling out for help. Ever since August 1994, when I learned about Shu's cruel betrayal, I've been walking a long, dark alley of death, and I knew that it was very possible that I'd die. And on March 13th, I lived alongside death, only a thin membrane separating us, and in those 10 days before I went to see Yang, it seemed like it could take me at any moment. I was living in an indescribable, trembling abyss. For the first time, I was forced to confront the high probability of death extinguishing the dual layers of my spiritual life and my corporeal life. In comparison, what I experienced in the past was a sort of voluntary death, whereas, say, a serious car accident is but a chance probability of corporeal death. To this day, I'm still not sure if I've emerged from this dark alley of death. After I returned to Paris back in March, sometimes I would walk along the Seine around 10 at night and imagine myself writing a novel called Last Words to Those I Love Deeply, and envisioned concluding each individual letter with the sounds, "Save me," with the words, "Save me." But in this novel, there was no letter to Shu. I suppose my words here are a final attempt to forgive Shu. If this fails, I can't keep living in a body that hates her so intensely. I'll have to die, as a final act of reconciliation for being alive, a reconciliation of my deepest love and hate intertwined, and a reconciliation with her being alive. My death will remind her of the seriousness and sincerity of life itself. There will be no more problem of forgiveness. A place will remain as the foundation of our love. Otherwise, if I am fortunate enough to stay alive, I'll have to use the cruelest methods to rid myself of this person, to completely erase this person from my life, because I love her too much, and I'm wounded too deeply by her betrayal and dishonesty. The issue of forgiveness relates to saving myself as well, Shu. 3. I read something Herbert Marcuse wrote in Eros and Civilization. Eros signifies a quantitative and qualitative aggrandizement of sexuality. I'm heartbroken. As far as what I look for in a partner, it seems my Eros will never be satisfied. I am so heartbroken realizing this, so terribly heartbroken. My dissatisfaction caused Shui Yao to leave me and run off with someone else, and it caused Shu, who promised to satisfy me body and soul, to disregard whatever catastrophic consequences might befall me and choose the most miserable and hard-hearted way of betraying me a second time, a dual betrayal of love and Eros even more ridiculous than the first. My God of fate, it's not that I didn't want to love these two women, nor that these two women I loved would betray me because I felt unfulfilled. A sense of unfulfillment was glaringly obvious to them. In the end, I was abandoned for being unfulfilled. It wasn't really my fault. Even though my unfulfillment has often caused me to feel frustrated, to suffer, and even to hate Shu temporarily, she never really understood that what she meant to me made up by far for any unfulfillment on my part and was the most important thing to me. Perhaps the way I talked to her was too confusing, and so I wasn't able to clearly tell her that what I wanted most of all was eternal in her, and only her, and not in anyone else. Although it is important to be fulfilled and to fulfill others, now if someone can completely fulfill me and be fulfilled by me, she cannot also be the one whose eternity I desire most of all. My expectations of Eros reach far beyond fulfillment and being fulfilled. What I desire is the full profundity of Eros in my life, the eternal. Shu, what exactly is the eternal? Eternal is the very limit of time and of space that we can transcend, the dividing line between life and death, the existence of emptiness, of our love for each other. This mutual love for each other is not sealed within our individual bodies, but is expressed through shared understanding, shared communication of this love. Death and life don't matter. We flow and we penetrate into the very essence of this Eros that is part of us. This is your eternity, along with the eternity I save for you. I think you couldn't ignore the fact that if you weren't able to fulfill me completely, and couldn't ignore my ideal expectations of Eros from you. And from the moment you fell in love with me, you had to deal with this disappointing problem, and eventually you couldn't bear my ideal expectations of Eros anymore. And this transformed your wholehearted devotion into a desire for someone else. And so you planned your escape for your soul and body to settle with another. And I felt the depths of your love for me. And I told you yours was the most intense I'd ever experienced. And because you couldn't deal with the burden of your own disappointment, you discarded me from your heart and removed my eternity. Or put another way, my eternity stopped expressing itself within you. But still your past love for me awoke something deep inside that held on to your eternity in me, and our union of love yielded blossoms of eternity in my heart, and this most precious possession has been the most beautiful and joyous gift of my life, and I will cultivate these blossoms in my heart forever, and even though I can't expect you to cultivate the same blossoms in your heart, mine are still the most beautiful and most longed for I could have prayed for. And this is a gift from you, a gift of blossoms that your love brought into my life. And for this, I say thank you. You aren't aware that this is my way of loving you from the depths of my heart, because so far, I've only expressed the burning anguish and resentment your painful behavior has subjected me to. But I treasure the blossoms you've given me, just as I treasure Bunny and every little thing, every blade of grass and every plant, every needle and every thread, every little word that you have given me, and I will water these blossoms each day, fertilize them, let them bloom and wilt and bloom again according to the season, and let you live forever at the center of my desire, breathing, smiling, playing. My life can go on like this. If I can suppress my resentment, I'm so happy. In Memoirs of Hadrian, Marguerite Yourcenar describes how, at age 20, the young Greek Antinous, the favorite of the lascivious Roman Emperor Aurelius, drowns himself in the river to demonstrate his love, thus fulfilling a promise of true devotion. To the emperor. Facing his death, the gray-haired old emperor finally comprehends Antinous' love for him and the real meaning of being one's emperor forever. A man too completely happy and who's growing old becomes blind in self-content. Could I have been so grossly satisfied? Antinous was dead, far from loving too much, as doubtless Servanus was proclaiming at that moment in Rome. I had not been loving enough to force the boy to live on. Chabrias, as a member of an Orphic cult, held suicide a crime, so he tended to insist upon the sacrificial aspect of that ending. I myself felt a kind of terrible joy at the thought that death was a gift, but I was the only one to measure how much bitter fermentation there is at the bottom of all sweetness, or what degree of despair is hidden under abnegation, what hatred is mingled with love. A being deeply wounded had thrown this proof of devotion at my very face. A boy fearful of losing everything had found this means of binding me to him forever. Had he hoped to protect me by such a sacrifice, he must have deemed himself unloved, indeed, not to have realized that the worst of ills would be to lose him. Antinous was not the only one to use death to fill his promise of eternal love in Aurelius. Yourcenar dedicated Memoirs of Hadrian to Grace Frick, her companion of 40 years, on a deserted island in the North Atlantic. In 1975, she cremated Frick's body, wrapped the ashes in Frick's favorite wool scarf, placed all of this in an Indian woven basket that Frick loved, and buried her in one final gesture of eternal love. Shu, even if you've already abandoned me, I want to act with the beauty of Antinous in your Snar. I am too greedy for life. Only this kind of beauty can be the crowning laurels of my existence. I want this crown of laurels so much so as to be as beautiful as Antinous and your Snar. Even if you are unwilling to accept this crown that I offer you, I want to transform myself into an idol in the temple of my own life, so that I can complete the meaning of my eternal love for you, a sacrificial offering to you who have abandoned me.